Welcome to the IRS Whisperer Podcast. This podcast is designed for tax professionals with a spin toward IRS representation. My name is Dan Henn, and I'm a CPA CTR. New episodes will drop weekly on Thursdays. Each week we'll be giving you exciting material to help the tax pro in their tax practice. That's assuming you can say exciting and taxes in the same sentence. On the IRS Whisperer Podcast, each episode will cover 3 different areas of a tax practice. We will present the marketing moment, which will cover various topics in marketing or sales to help you generate more clients and revenue in your business. The world of practice management will give you suggestions on how to better run your tax practice. And we will also cover our technical time that will cover some of the latest changes or tips and tricks to help you in handling your IRS representation case. So I'm so glad you are here and hope you enjoy the show. Now, on to today's episode. Welcome to the show. I want to talk about a few different topics this week. First thing that I wanted to talk about is the word or phrase, I can't. How many times do you tell yourself, I can't? And it's very frustrating to hear people say, I can't. Now, trust me when I say this. I know I've said this probably myself many times before. But I've learned to not have those words, I can't, or something like, it's impossible, or that won't work in my business. Any number of things that we just put a negative spin on. Now, I coach my daughter in youth soccer. I'm coaching this year U14 level recreational team, and it really irritates me when I'm talking to the kids and I tell them to do something and they say, I can't do that. Like they can't dribble. They're not good with their feet moving the ball. They can't kick it far. They can't kick it accurately. And they say, I can't. And I tell them, you can. You've just got to practice. You've got to mentally work on your brain that you can do this. But it's not something, they're not going to get better by not practicing. If they just come out to practice every week, that's just not enough time. They have to do it on their own. Somebody like a Ronaldo or a Lionel Messi, the David Beckhams and the superstar soccer players of the world, they didn't just all of a sudden become the best players. They became the best players because they excelled at it. They practiced it. Most of you have all heard the Michael Jordan story where he used to be at the gym at 4 a.m. shooting free throws. And he would beat everybody in the gym at free throws. Even when he was a professional with the Chicago Bulls, he was still beating all the rest of his teammates in there. And he was usually there an hour before them shooting free throws, shooting around in the paint area. And there are countless professionals that are like that. The Lynn Swann, receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Jerry Rice, the receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. Some of them are just known for, that's all they did. They lived and breathed this stuff. So what does that mean for you? The first thing that I want to say is try to get yourself out of the habit saying, I can't do that. It's not possible. It won't work in my business. Most anything can work in your business. Okay, we're not any special business out there than what any other business is. It's just, how does it work in your business? You might maybe need to tweak it. We need to make sure that we scrub it through any laws that we have, either federally in our states, respectively, for our license type. You need to make sure that obviously things fit within the rules. But there are many times where you just have to say, I can, and if you're willing to, you have to practice it. Let's take, for example, sales. Let's talk about sales for a minute. It was a topic that I wanted to cover today. To become a good salesperson, one of the gentlemen that I follow, I've actually met him. He's in a mastermind group that I'm in. His name is Joe Marcoux. He runs the SOS Dojo. He's got a group on school. And they literally practice being a part of it. If you know anything about dojo, like karate, you go and you practice. You do a lot of repetitive hand movements, leg movements, and if you watch the Karate Kid, the wax on, wax off. Except they don't do that. They actually do certain moves. And they practice that. And you have to be able to do certain moves in order to get to the next level of belt. It goes from white to orange to green. I forget what it goes to. But in order to do that, you have to master being able to handle certain aspects. For example, one of the biggest things in sales that we always have to deal with is objections. The objections are as long as the list as long as my arm. So there's a long list of objections. But Joe has found a way that using things like making sure you don't use I statements, you use you statements when you're talking. That takes practice. You can't just say, "Oh, I know how you feel." That you've already lost the battle right there. You say, "So what you're saying is this," or "So you're feeling this," and whatever it is, if you will, parrot it back and then translate it a little bit. That if I could, you're saying it's expensive, but if I could show you that it has more value and does this, or what would it take to help you buy today? Many words and phrases that many of us are afraid to say because we're not natural. Most of us are not natural born salespeople, although we do it well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have clients, right? And most of us think that price is one of the biggest things that we want to sell upon. Unfortunately, what happens is that when it comes to the price side of things and trying to sell, is that we will lowball the sales amount because we think that this person told us one thing that they can't afford it. Normally we might charge $300, but for you, I'm going to do it for $200. And the story that I use, I think I've told this story before, but I have some friends of mine, a couple of EAs, a couple in San Diego area, that the wife was telling this story. I was hearing it, she was talking about it in front of a group. And she was saying how year after year, this client had probably been their client for, I think she said something like 6, 8, 10 years. And the husband was in a wheelchair, and I think the wife had some other kind of disability. They had a teenage child at the time, and she'd been preparing their return. There wasn't a whole lot of taxable income, and they didn't charge them a whole lot of money. And one year they came to her, and they were asking if they could do some tax planning or doing something for them in regard to some situation. And she made the comment about, you don't have a lot of taxable income. It was true that they didn't have a lot of taxable income, but that doesn't mean they didn't have income. It turns out that they actually had a lot of income, a lot more than what she had originally known, because we only know what's taxable, we know what's deductible, we don't care really about anything else. Unless you're a collections or exam representation professional, then you have to know a lot more than you would for tax preparation. But when it comes to the tax preparation, they've been charging this lowball fee when it turns out that they could have easily afforded probably double, if not triple, the fee that they've been charging. So they left money on the table by making an assumption. Not only that, but if you go out and you start lowballing all these offers, yes, that brings the work in, but we're not just looking for any warm body that comes in the door. You should be looking for the right people. Now, I'll talk about client acceptance in a future episode. You shouldn't be looking at trying to serve everybody. Because one, if the next 10 people that came into your office, you quoted a fee, they all accepted that fee, then you've got now 10 returns to do. Let's hypothetically say you charge $250 for each of those returns. That's usually about the country average, right? So you charge $250 that for those 10 returns, it's $2,500 you're getting. Now, what if you tripled that? So $750. And instead of getting 10 of the people, you got 3 of the people, right? So that would be $2,250. And you're working with 3 people versus 10 people at $250. So basically I'm making almost the same money, but I'm working with 30% less people. Now, from a time management, productivity perspective, a stress level perspective, from a due date perspective, Which do you think is better, to work with 10 people or with 3? Month after month, you keep adding these. So let's say, hypothetically, you added 10 people at that amount for the whole year. Every month, you got 10 new people. It means you got 120 clients that are paying you. Let's do the math. I'm going to pull out my calculator here. So if I got 120 clients paying me $250, it's $30,000. So let's take the flip side. So let's say you got 3 new clients at a month for 12 months. So that's 36 new clients, and they each paid you $750. That's $27,000. Okay? So you have the choice of working with 36 people versus 120 people. So you're working with a third of the people in one scenario making $27,000, and you're working for $30,000 on 120 people. Now, if we just look at it from a pure time perspective, the time that it takes to spend on 120 people versus 36 people is not times 4. I'd probably even say it's more like times 6 or 10, because you've got 120 people, not to mention some of them are going to have family members, the spouse, the children. There's extra stuff that are being thrown in there. A lot of them are going to whine and complain. Some of them aren't even going to fully pay you. Not that's going to be at the 750 level that it's a whole lot better. Okay, it is better. Okay, I can testify to that the stress level, the number of clients, the needs of these clients are usually a little bit more, but they're willing to pay for that. So they're more willing to pay for the representation. They're more willing to pay for the planning, for the consulting, for the proactiveness of a tax professional, which we are not known for. We are known for, at best, being reactive versus anything else. So you need to make sure that you set yourself up for success. Okay, and ultimately that comes back to pricing. It comes back to the sales aspect of it. Don't sell yourself short. Okay, every single one of you are worth at least double, if not triple or more than what you're offering currently. And I would challenge you to the next person that walks in the door. In fact, probably the next 10 people. Just do it as a test. Next 10 people that walk in the door, double the price of whatever service that you normally offer. So let's say you got 10 people coming in, they're inquiring about a 1040. You normally charge $250, offer $500. What I want you to do is just document that, okay? So you track it on a spreadsheet, on a sheet of paper, I don't care what. You do something that says, okay, you wrote these numbers down, you write their name down, you wrote the fee quote, and you write yes or no whether they accepted it or not, okay? And if you did that, and then try to look at maybe the 10 people that you offered the lower price to, and do the same thing. Yes or no, did they become your client? And do the math, okay? Because even if hypothetically, let's say all 10 of them took you up on the 750, is that necessarily a bad thing? Because now you got 10 clients, but they're paying you more. Okay, and when they pay you more, that gives you more money in your pocket. That gives you more of a sense of pride, if you will, a sense of worth, a sense that now you're providing you're being paid for your service, for the knowledge, for the experience. It's not cheap for us to buy all the software, books, and CPE, and all the classes that we have to take in order to maintain our licenses, to maintain our practices. So do what you can to improve your life, and you can do that by offering pricing. I'll talk more in detail because there's a lot more to it that comes to that. There's offering package pricing, trying to pre-educate them, to try to create referrals. There's the whole follow-up procedure. Are you following up at all? But for most people, if you just followed up on every 10 and got one more, and sometimes it's just a quick phone call, it's a quick email, hey, just wanted to touch base with you, see if you'd made your decision, and I've got 15 minutes to answer any other questions that you may have. Because I can guarantee you most of your competition isn't doing that. Okay, and all it does is it takes for what they look like that we're caring about them. Not that I'm not saying we don't, because we do. But just take that little extra effort for that. Now, I want to jump into talking into one particular strategy to help improve the number of people that come in to inquire about you. So generating the leads that turns them into prospects, that keeps them as clients, to anything that you can do. And that's what we call in the getting testimonials and reviews. Now, if you have a proper strategy, your strategy should be no less than one Google review and one other review, a written testimonial, a video testimonial, a review on some other site. So if you use a site like TaxCure or Thumbtack. I'm not a fan of them. I used them at one point in time, and somebody gave me a bad review on there, and they didn't want to do anything about it because they chose something that I didn't do. And so they gave me a 1 star. So I'm not a huge fan of their service and haven't used it since. But it is a viable service. It is another way for you to get out there. And there's plenty other services that are similar to it. It's like the Angie's List for professionals. Okay, so what you need to do is make sure that, and you should make it somebody else's job, not your job. It should be somebody else's job in your office. Now, if you're the me, myself, and I firm, then it has to be. So you should set up a process that when the client is done, okay, so you've got the return done, they've signed the documents, and now you've e-filed the return. So the easy step is when you've e-filed the return, that return has been accepted, then an email or a phone call should be going out to that client that says, hey, great news, your return's been filed and it's been accepted by the IRS. And for that matter, even if you could send them the Form 9325 that shows the DCN, all of the information showing where and when it was filed so that they have proof in their hands. Because obviously that's a good client service type of issue. Now, if you could do that and you get any kind of, like when you're on the phone, they're happy and excited, or you get a response in the email, that's great. Then just a simple, hey, would you mind doing a Google review for me? Would you mind doing a video testimonial? Or maybe even listing all three. Hey, would you mind doing a Google review, a video testimonial, or a written testimonial for me? And if they say yes, then there's obviously a number of ways that you can do it. You can say, reply and say, hey, great, here's the link to do the Google review. Or ask them which one that they would choose that they'd like to do. And if they were told they want to do a Google review, send them the link to your Google review page. Make it easy for them to go and do that. And maybe even go as further to offer an incentive, like a $15 Amazon card, a $15 Starbucks card, a $15 to their favorite restaurant. Something that they would end up using. Okay, now maybe leave it as an open thing, maybe give them a choice on certain things, because, how long does it take to do a Google review? Now, obviously give them a few parameters, things that say, hey, what did they do for you? And try to get them to be a little specific. Like, for example, a tax planning one is a great one. Hey, Joe saved me $15,000 with a great tax planning idea that we're about to employ, and not only that, but it's going to save me $15,000 a year. Okay? Or you ended up doing a resolution case for somebody, and Sally saved me $15,000 in penalties. Okay? Or I owe the $100,000, and Dave was able to get me into a currently non-collectible status, and then have them leave the review. Okay? Now, obviously, when it comes to certain representation stuff, some people may be a little leery about wanting to use their name. So use the initials, their first and last, or use their first name and last initial, or just their first name. When it's something like that, when it comes to tax prep, tax planning, that shouldn't be that much of a difficulty for people to leave a review and put their full name when it comes to that. So please make sure that you do that. I've been told by a professional who works in this area that if you want to improve your results in Google, it's much better than SEO if you can get at least one Google review a month and obviously post to a blog, do some extra stuff out there. Those things will help raise you up on the Google pages. Okay, so when somebody does a search for CPA in my area, EA tax professional in my area, or specific city, those things will help you to increase the visibility of your firm. Now, not only that, but you can use these testimonials, obviously ask for permission, and ask specifically if you can use their name. If they're okay with that, then by all means go with that. Many people don't care. Some people do, especially if maybe they're more a public figure in politics or they're a big executive in your town. Then don't use their names if that's going to cause them grief or issue. But make sure that you try to do what you can to create these reviews, testimonials, use them in your marketing, use them on your landing pages, in a letter when you send them to prospects and clients, in your shock and awe box, in your new client wow box, whatever it is you're sending to them. Make sure that you include those, okay? Because they do work. They do provide value. I'm the kind of person that there's many times I'm looking at reviews. I'll look at a few 5 stars. I'll look at a few 1 or 2 stars. Might, depending on how bad I want and what I'm looking for, especially if it's a higher priced item, I am more likely to read a few. Like when I go on trips, whether it's business or personal, if I decide that I want to use a site like Airbnb or VRBO and I'm out there looking for a short-term rental, I will look at 5, 6, 10, even 15 reviews, because I want to make sure that I try to read the ones that are providing more color, because I'm looking for words like noise at night and it's above a restaurant and there's a lot of noise, or everything was great except for the dog next door, or just those kinds of things, because we don't deal well with a lot of noise. And there's many times where we haven't picked a place just because there's been a few people that have said those kinds of comments. The more 5 stars that you can get, especially if you've gotten a 1, 2, or less than 5 star, those kind of help overcome. The more you can get those 5 stars of people that you know that like you, they love you, then go out there and start doing that. Now, there's services you can use for this. There are ways that you can send an email. Many of you probably gotten that email where, it's click the 1 through 5 or 1 to 10 or the smiley face, the meh face, or the frowny face. If you get somebody to see what their temperature is, if they don't give you the smiley face, if they don't click the 8, 9, 10, if they don't click the 4s or 5, depending on their various scales, then they don't see the links to leave a review. Okay, hey, what did we do wrong? What can we improve? That's what they should be seeing. Because obviously there's something that you fell down on, and if you found out about it now and you can address it now, because you may not know it even exists, that problem or issue, and you can save the client, because there's many times where I've had somebody come back and I'm like, that hasn't come back, and I don't know why, and I just usually never had the time to go and try and chase them down. And my philosophy was more of, hey, if you don't want to be with me, I don't want to be with you either. Probably not the best attitude to have, but because if I ended up fighting for my clients, if I was more proactive, if I reached out to them in the off season, even if it wasn't just me, it was somebody from my office, then that would be a great way to retain clients and retain some good clients. I always hated when the good clients would leave and then I'd end up with crap that I let in the door, because that's a whole separate topic we'll talk about on another day about firing clients, because it occupies your space, and just don't let that happen. Now, lastly, I want to talk about here just real quick is when it comes to the technical side of representation, and I'm going to talk more specifically about collections representation. One thing that I think many licensed tax professionals overlook is the handling of business cases. Now, when it comes to business cases, they're obviously, to a certain degree, different than the individual side. Okay, most everybody handles the individuals because a lot of people will prepare individual tax returns. And a lot fewer professionals handle business tax returns. But more specifically, so when it comes to the business returns, obviously you've got a penalty on a late filed S corporation. You got the penalty on a late filed partnership. You've got the taxes, penalties, and interest on the C corporation. Okay, so you've got those particular issues that you can deal with. So the C corporation is really not a whole lot different than the individual. You still got to do financial analysis and determine whether or not there are options. And depending on their ability to generate revenue and have a profit, will determine whether or not they qualify for any of the normal offer, currently uncollectible, installment agreement, partial pay options. But one of the things that I think a lot of people don't deal with is payroll. Okay, now, whether or not you deal with payroll in your tax practice or not, you have those clients, whether you prepare those returns or you use the software, a lot of people get themselves into trouble. And sometimes they get themselves into a lot of trouble. All business related tax issues, or at least the tax liens that are filed, are on payroll related issues. And why is that? One, there's a lot more of those returns that are being filed. And keep in mind, that's trust estates, that's nonprofits, that's government entities. So any or all of these people can have problems with payroll. And the government takes the payroll issue very seriously because that's generally how we fund the daily operations of our federal government. Because every day somebody is submitting payroll, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, monthly. Everybody has different days during the year, federal tax deposits, or the payments are made quarterly at worst, if it's generally under the $2,500 amount. So there's a lot of people out there that are doing it, and they're unfortunately doing it wrong. I just read a study that said that 98% of the people who deferred when President Trump in his first term offered the deferral of the payroll taxes for a couple of years, 98% of the people who chose that have paid that. But there was, I think it was like 3 million businesses chose to take that. And when you look at that and say that 2% of those, that's still a good number. I think it ended up being like 67,000 businesses still haven't fully paid those balances. Now, there's probably a good chance some of those aren't even in business anymore. At the end of the day, the government wants to hold somebody responsible. Okay, that's why we have the trust fund recovery penalty. And for you as a licensed tax professional, if you've not looked into how to handle these cases, they're not overly complicated. It is something new. It's something additional on top of the 1040. It's unique to the business and the payroll related issue. But there are so many different ways that you can play it. I've advised many of our members in the past to doing something where they can basically avoid the situation as long as the client sets up themselves properly for dealing with the situation. So I would highly encourage you to look into that. If you're interested, I know in the Tax Resolution Academy, we have a number of classes. In fact, we have 4 2-hour classes just specifically on trust fund recovery penalty. And we have another, at least 3 or 4 classes that deal with other preliminary issues, financial analysis, just understanding the basic economics of the 941s, why it's an issue, talking about the resolution options and how we analyze it. So we have a bunch of different classes that we talk about that particular area and how to basically master that particular area. And not only that, a great resource to try and generate some referrals from that particular area is going out to your payroll professionals. Okay, all those salespeople that are always looking for those referrals from you, then do the reverse. Go and take them to lunch. Go do something special for them and ask for the opportunity to get those referrals with them. Okay, because most of these payroll companies, they want to deal with payroll from today going forward. They don't want to deal with the payroll going back historical. They generally don't have the people or team or resources to deal with that. Although I heard somebody, I don't know if it was ADP or somebody was looking at taking those on and hiring professionals to handle those cases. But most of them won't deal with that. And you can get in there, let them handle the payroll, which I'm always perfectly fine with that. Then you come in and you deal with the historical 941s, catch them up on that, understand what the liability is, and do what you can, if you will, play the game so that they don't get assessed individually for the trust fund recovery penalty. Okay? So with that, please let me know if you have any questions. Please reach out if there's a topic that you'd like to see covered in one of our podcasts. Otherwise, I hope everything is going well. By the time I'm recording this, it's after the September 15th deadline, but before the October 15th deadline. So hopefully you're not going crazy, stressing yourself out. Otherwise, if you are, we need to talk. There is a better way to handle this so that you don't deal with this stress in, year out. I learned that before I sold my practice. I sold the regular recurring type of work. I still handle representation cases, collections, and exam on my own now. But that's all I do in my firm outside of coaching other people like you on how to handle your practice, and know that just because it was done that way last year doesn't mean that it has to be done that way in the future. So with that, you have a great rest of your day. And let me know if you have questions, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you for listening to our show. We hope you received some valuable information to help you in your tax practice. The IRS Whisperer is sponsored by the Tax Resolution Academy. If you have any questions you'd like to see addressed on the show, or comments to help us make it better, please reach out to us on social media. Follow us or download our shows on your favorite podcast app. Tune in to our next episode, where we'll give you some more exciting information to help you grow your practice.